use questions. But when something like this happens, something so stupid, so simple, there's nothing to be done. Nothing that can be done, even with our advances. I woke up 3 weeks ago in this place, in a medium-sized room with concrete walls, floor, and ceiling. In spots, the concrete stained and cracked. A single light bulb hangs from the ceiling, and sometimes it flickers. It's not a very powerful bulb, but enough to see by. I woke up next to a woman. I didn't recognize her, but it didn't matter. I didn't know where I was. I didn't even know how I'd gotten here. There didn't seem to be any doors or windows or opening of any kind, just a concrete box with me and a sleeping woman in it. I woke her up after a few moments of dazed confusion. She didn't scream, which was my worry, but instead asked questions calmly. "Where are we?" she asked. I don't know. "How did we get here?" "I don't know." "Who are you?" I smiled. Finally, a question I could actually answer. "I'm Tom." I said, "Tom, I woke up here just a few minutes ago, and I was hoping you'd have an idea about it. Since you don't, well, you may as well get acquainted. You know my name, what's yours?" I stuck out my hand. She shook it. "I'm Melissa," she replied. "Melissa Dobbs. Last I remembered, I was..." She froze and creased her eyebrows. "Did you hear that?" I listened, but I didn't hear anything. I shook my head. "What was it?" I asked. "It sounded like, I don't know, a thump." I sat in silence for a few minutes, listening for another noise. There was nothing but silence as long as we sat there. After a long while, I just shook my head. I don't think there's anything here, Melissa," I said. "But if you did hear a sound, that means we're close to the surface." "The surface?" she repeated. "What do you mean, the surface?" "Well, the way that I figure, we're probably underground. Where else would someone keep a concrete box? Another thing I'm wondering is how they even got us in here. It all seems like a dream, you know?" I sighed and leaned my back against the wall. This couldn't be happening, not really. "I know what you mean," Moses said. It doesn't really seem real. This doesn't just happen. This can't just happen. But this time, I did hear the noise. It was like a thump, like a squishy thump. Like if you hit an animal with a heavy object. Images of bleeding animals flashed through my mind, pictures of infants being hit with hammers and baseball bats. I almost jumped. I was surprised. Why would I think that? That wasn't normal. None of this was normal. This place, that sound, these thoughts, none of it was right. "Did you?" "Yeah, I heard it that time," interrupted Melissa. I started to ask if she saw things, but she would think I was crazy. Being here was making me a little stressed, sure, crazy. No, I wouldn't let her think that. Melissa and I spent the rest of the day discussing the situation and listening to the noises. It seems that they came at regular intervals, once every 10 minutes or so. I thought maybe we were near an automatic machine, something when the sounds came, I would have that flashes of terrible thoughts. It was disgusting and wrong. But it happened. I couldn't help it. I wondered if Melissa had flashes too, but I didn't dare ask her if my own companion thought that I was crazy. Well, I didn't think that it would end well. We had thought it was some sort of hostage-taking at first. We thought that we had been taken captive by criminals. So we decided. It was a normal assumption. About 30 thumps into the day, though, our thoughts changed. We were hungry. If the thumps really were coming every 10 minutes, then 30 thumps meant that we were awake for 5 hours. I could hear my stomach growling, and once I even heard Melissa's. We were thirsty, though. My throat was sore and dry. We had no water, no food. We were talking about what we'd do when we got out of this box, when it happened. The interviews, the books, maybe even the movies that would come. We could both get rich off this. We tried to remain positive like that. Suddenly, everything went black. It felt like only a second, and I didn't realize that my eyes had been closed until I opened them. Melissa and I woke up at the same time. We were confused. Somehow we blacked out at the same time, woken up at the same time, and food. Melissa whispered, "There's food and water." She was staring into a corner of the room, where before there'd been nothing, but now there was 2 trays with food and water in them. My stomach rumbled. I didn't care where they'd come from or how that we blacked out. "Let's eat," I said. "Grab the trays. We can talk about it in a few thumps." Melissa actually laughed. "It's funny how we measure time can change just like that," she said, grabbing food. "But I guess it's just as good as minutes or hours." The food was good. Warm. Steak and potatoes. A scoop of ice cream for dessert. A liter bottle of water to drink. The steak was pre-cut for us, so no knives. And the forks that we were given were dull. Very dull. No way that we could hurt anyone with them. Not that we were able to, regardless, since it seemed they could induce loss of consciousness whenever they wanted to. I got the feeling that once we got done eating, we'd just black out again and the forks and trays would be gone. We ate in silence, and then my guess was confirmed. We lost our trays and our forks, and again, we were just in an empty concrete box. We never actually talked about it. We just kept busy talking about other things. About another 50 or so thumps, we went to sleep. It was hard at first to sleep with the thumps, but as with anything, you grow accustomed to it. You grow accustomed to the thumps and the flashes and the blackouts, just as people grow accustomed to planes, phones, and iPads. It's adaptation. It's evolution. I don't know how long we slept, but every day there seemed to be less time in between each thump. Each day, though, the food seemed to be getting a little bit better. I mean, the first day's food was good, but it seemed bland. Each day, the food tasted better as if a reward for losing time between thumps. This is conditioning. By day 10, there was barely any time between thumps. The food was delicious. We couldn't get enough. Melissa and I got along well enough. We were both becoming pretty big friends, and at around day 5, we started having sex. I mean, we didn't love each other, but we were both adults. We both wanted something to keep us busy and entertained, and why not sex? Day 12, though, things took a turn. They went bad. We were eagerly awaiting lunch. We were ready for the blackout, ready to delight in the delicious food that we would come. We weren't thinking about escape. We weren't thinking about anything. Thumps, flashes, food. Thumps, flashes, food. The flashes had gotten worse. So much worse. The thumps came so fast now. The flashes were in my head all the time. The babies, open, dead, dogs, limbs severed, laying on pools of blood, cats with their eyes put out. All just animals, dead animals. Their lives that had been so important before, now useless, now nothing. Now just a heap of blood and regret. This is my future. This is the death of all. Thump. Darkness. When I awoke, I didn't smell food like I was used to. Melissa was awake, crying. "What's the matter?" I asked her. "Why are you awake already?" I didn't fall asleep this time," she whispered. They came in straight to the wall. They were so hideous. They calm down, Melissa. I went to her and put my arm around her. She latched onto me weakly. "Tell me what happened." "They don't have mouths, Tom," she cried. "They're not human, but the thumps come from their heads. We don't hear them with our ears, Tom. I never noticed before, but we hear them with our heads. Do you understand? They didn't bring food. They said that they'd keep bringing food from now on, but not today. They tried to tell me something else, but they had to stop thumping to tell me, and once the thumps were gone, I didn't hear. I didn't want to. I begged them to stop. I begged them to bring it back. They stopped talking. They left. This is necessary." I held Melissa until she stopped crying and fell asleep. I thought about the changes we had now. I was trying to comfort her, but all I could think about was the flashes had stopped. I hadn't realized until that moment, because I was so used to the flashes accompanying the thumps, that I had given myself flashes, but they weren't coming anymore, not really. Something had changed since mealtime, and it made me almost uncomfortable. I could understand Melissa panicking when the thumping stopped now, though I don't think I would have freaked out nearly that badly. Melissa was still crying. "I'm sorry, Tom," pushing her face to my chest, and I could feel her tears seeping through my shirt. I should have been able to talk to her, but the thumps, it's so strange when they're gone. I'm used to them now. I understood perfectly. We spent the rest of that day solemnly talking, now about what we would do when we got out, but how we possibly could get out. Things weren't normal. The thought that we might get out was beyond us now. We accepted that we could live life like this, at least for a while, then one day, maybe in a month, maybe in a year, we might use our forks and dig into our wrists. Do they have thumps in heaven, or hell, or whatever's beyond? We got food the next day. The thumps continued and the flashes remained silent. The food was better and life was good again. Melissa, though, she was shaken. Maybe it was seeing our captors that had made her so on edge. Maybe they put something inside of her head. The flashes, I thought. Is it possible that they left my head and went to hers? It's crazy, but crazier things had happened here. Every day, Melissa got more nervous, more agitated. I couldn't understand. I tried to talk to her about it, but she wouldn't answer my questions. She just looked at me and shook her head. "Nothing's wrong," she would say. "I'm just tired." This is denial. It happened on day 20. We fell asleep. We woke up and ate our food. We went about things as usual. I didn't know. And if I had, I would have done something. Suffering alone is 1,000 times worse than suffering with a friend. I was finishing my dessert, and Melissa did it quick as lightning. She stabbed herself hard in one wrist, then the other. Then she shoved it into her mouth. She jammed it in her throat, pulling and pushing and grinding it in there, trying desperately to kill herself, to end it with a fork. One wrist was bright red. It hadn't drawn blood. The other she stabbed harder, much harder, and it had holes in it. The holes were pretty deep, leaking, pouring blood. Blood was trickling out of her mouth, and when I thrown my food down and reached out to stop her, she kicked me in the chest. I fell against the wall, and she kept stabbing, cutting, choking with the fork. I didn't even realize that I was screaming. The thumps had joined together by this point, making constant noise, and it was hard to hear over it. Eventually, she slowed down, trying to force the fork down her throat. She gagged and choked and retched, but it didn't come out. I got to her and pushed her arms away and reached in, but it was far down at this point, too far. My only companion was dying. She died quickly. Through the blood and the choking, I don't know what killed her. I didn't care. I cried the rest of that day. I felt like doing the same thing. I thought maybe I would the next day. Maybe I would join her again. At least I wouldn't be alone. The next day, however, didn't work out like that. I waited and waited. Eventually, the blackout came. I was eager to kill myself after a delightful meal. I just hoped I didn't mess up. I'd hate to be half dead on the floor, pissing and shitting myself all alone for who knows how long. Fortunately, I didn't have the opportunity to mess it up. I woke up outside. It was dark. This wasn't right. No, I whispered. No one was in sight, but I could see the lights of a town in the distance. I was out. I made it out of my concrete prison. No, This is panic. This is change. I'm not ready for this. The thumps were gone. But things had changed. Adaptation, conditioning, the thumps were gone. The flashes were back. Evolution. I wasn't used to the silence. It was driving me mad. The flashes didn't help. I knew what would make the flashes go away, though. The thumps. They would keep the flashes at bay. Make me comfortable again. That was all I needed. And they've been teaching me all along how to make those thumps. They've been teaching me since day one. I just had to... My goodness, not thinking about it. I needed the thumps. Did I have to lose anyway? My only companion was gone. I stood, and I headed to the town. That's thumps. That's usually what I do.